Yes, so thank you and hello everybody. So thanks for having me. So this meeting, well, the idea for that meeting came about when the advisor down there at the Desert Research and Extension Center, Brooke Latex, she contacted me and said that there is some interest in the E. coli, getting some information on the E. coli vaccine. And so that was kind of the trigger. And so when I started looking into that, I realized that, well, I think it really is better to do something a little bit more comprehensive. So I put together that fact sheet that's in your package on measures to prevent E. coli. I just looked through the literature. And then when I talked to Rob, so he is another specialist. His specialty is waterborne diseases. So he does a lot of research on cryptosporidium and how livestock and cryptosporidium and how it ends up in the water and all that interaction. And he's also he's the director of VetMed Extension and also the director of the Western Institute for Food Safety. So he has a lot of expertise in that realm. And he suggested, well, maybe it's time to do a workshop with the producers down there to hear what their main concerns are and also to kind of see what the research needs are. So we put together this program, and I feel that it was very successful. It was very interesting to hear them and to also communicate with them what has been going on our side. So we had a speaker from the North American Institute for the North American Meat Institute, NAMI, and she gave an overview of what happens at the slaughter. And so that was already mentioned by Justin, that we have this system in place, the HAZOP, so hazard analysis critical control points, where as the animal enters that pathway through slaughter, there are certain points in time and space that have been identified where it's critical to do certain interventions or to make sure that downstream the product is safe. And so that's kind of a system that's been very successful. Well, it's not 100%, but it's proven to be a very successful system. And during the discussion, it kind of came up, well, isn't there something that the leafy green people can do that's kind of more like that, can't they do more interventions to make it safer? And of course, that's difficult because leafy greens are a completely different product, so it has a very short turnaround time from farm to fork. It's a much more fragile product. It can't undergo the same sort of chemical washes, etc., that the meat product can, and also it's consumed raw. So it makes it, obviously much more difficult, or puts the leafy green people at a disadvantage in that respect. Then we moved on to talk about the possible interventions, and some of them have already been mentioned. So there are products that can be added to the feed to reduce the risk, all the producers said that they do it, or they feel like all of them down there in the Holtville area use this product, and so they feel that they're already contributing to food safety in that respect. And as Justin mentioned, this is at no financial benefit to them. So it's basically it's just an expense to them. There's other products that are also beneficial that they don't use or didn't know about. So there's a seaweed product that reduces E. coli shedding as well. And then finally, the vaccine itself. There's only one vaccine available on the market at the moment. And it's for the same reason, it is not that popular, because it's an expense. So it needs to be given 3 times to be effective. Every time animals have to be moved through a chute to handle. It's stressful for them. The feedlot loses money because the animal doesn't gain weight as well. So it just seems, combined with the the amount of money that needs to be spent for the vaccine, the inconvenience of moving the cattle through the system, etc. It seems to be a non-starter for most of them. We moved then on to talk a little bit more about the research that has gone into food safety, the whole interface, livestock, produce interface that's been going on in California, and a lot of the people that were very instrumental. So Dr. Jay Russell, who's here today, and she's going to talk to you more about the specifics of that research later on, so I'll just keep it very broad. And it's been mentioned already that because California is such a big producer, it just puts us at risk for being the source of one of those outbreaks. So it just comes with the sheer amount of produce that comes from here. And as has been mentioned, we're also a big cattle producer, so we have this interface that we just need to deal with. So there have been outbreaks, and they have been investigated. And the research that was done looked at possible sources, right? So looked at the epidemiology. So I looked at livestock as a possible source, looked at wildlife as a possible source. And when they looked at the cow-calf operations that were around the area where the spinach outbreak was, they did find some positives, but it was the prevalence was very low. And when they looked at wildlife species, the prevalence in each species by itself was also not very high, but when you combine all the samples that were taken from wildlife and compared them to those that came from the cow-calf operations, they were actually a little bit higher. And then the other thing that has to be considered is that wildlife obviously has a much easier access to these fields than do the cow-calf of animals that are constrained. So overall, that research just kind of wasn't able to point the finger at the livestock as a likely source or as the source. It also has to be understood that all these systems are very complicated. So E. coli doesn't just come from one animal. It moves between species. It lives in the environment, so you really have to kind of consider the whole ecosystem. So it's, even though a lot of research has gone into this, it's just difficult to really point to one particular source. Rob also wants to emphasize that if you find a certain strain that matches an outbreak strain, it doesn't necessarily mean that is the source. He kind of has this metaphor where he says, well, if you have a bloody knife that you find in front of a house, well, does that mean that the murderer lives in that house? Well, not necessarily. So again, it's just a difficult area where we have to continue looking, and we have to continue doing research, and that was also the bottom line is what we all took away, I feel, from that workshop was that what the producers really would like to see is to have more research that is done in that area, so that it's specific to California, and especially to that area in Southern California where we have that intense livestock production as well as the produce production. So that is specific to that area, and as Justin also mentioned, to have metrics that are based on the research that comes from there. We have some research that was done that was also presented there from Arizona that provided some preliminary data. And yes, there was some positive found in that setup, in that experiment, in that experimental setup. But again, it was a limited study, and there is the need to do more and to do more that is, again, specific to that area. So I think that was kind of the summary of what happened at that meeting. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
The question about the supplement. Do you want to say just a little bit more of
what the supplement is?
And how it,
mechanism? Okay, so it's the name is Bovamine Defend, and it is a probiotic. And so basically the mechanism of how probiotics are working is that they are basically bacteria themselves, but they're beneficial bacteria. So it's basically kind of like eating yogurt. So you all know how yogurt is supposed to be good for your digestion, etc. So this is the same principle where these bacteria that are fed, they're supposed to crowd out the pathogenic bacteria. So basically just by providing good gut health, they're replacing any pathogens. And also, I guess I should mention that any of these ways to reduce the risk, none of them is going to work 100%. So I mean, there's been a lot of research that has gone into this, which is what I found out when I did my literature search. So many things have been tried, many things have been looked at, and even the ones that are showing consistently good results, none of them works 100%. Even the vaccine also, it's not 100%, and I don't think there will ever be any one thing that can reduce E. coli, pathogenic E. coli shedding to zero, unfortunately. There is, I don't know, there's in the handout, there's also mention of a different product. It's a seaweed product, Tasco. I'm not entirely sure on the exact mechanism, but it's supposed to have antimicrobial activity itself. So it works a little bit differently. So it seems like it's actually more reducing the burden, the burden of pathogenic bacteria, particularly directly. So the seaweed is called Tasco, Tasco. So the question was, so since there is seasonality to E. coli shedding, are there any recommendations that these products should be used strategically during the times when there is more shedding? So the situation down in Holtville is such that there's actually in the summer, there's not a lot of leafy green growing happening because it's too hot. So I'm not quite sure what they do, but I believe they use it all year round. But I'm not 100% sure. However, I mean, it would make sense, but I think that would also require some monitoring. So I don't know if the manufacturers of that product have. I don't think they make any recommendations of how to use it. I think it kind of depends on where you are, what your system is. If it's something that you don't want to use all the time, then it's probably a good idea to use it strategically in the summer. So, I mean, right now with the heat wave that we have, it's probably a great time for pathogenic E. coli at the moment. All right, so the question was whether we know about the risk of salmonella shedding in cattle. Well, it's not zero. I know it's not zero. There's cattle do shed salmonella. You catch me by surprise, so to speak. I mean, I don't have a lot of ways. Well, these are all the things that can be done to reduce that. I know. Well, I mean, at the from the food safety standpoint, at the slaughter plant, those same mechanisms that are in place to reduce E. coli also work for salmonella, of course.